Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla and let's go over the market and see what has happened and what we can expect moving forward. So as usual, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And again, my membership section is down below. It is now live for $2.99. I share my intraday thoughts on Tesla as it updates throughout the day on anything that's, I think, worth sharing and that's meaningful. Link is below if you're interested. If not, let's move on. So all that being said and done, Tesla going up to that 250 level, closing just shy above $250 per share, which is putting us up 3.8% on the dot compared to the market, pretty much roughly performing in line to just tech in general, really, right? More or less in line with tech, not really an outperformance nor an underperformance as well. So, but what does this mean, right? Now, we closed at just barely above 250, and just yesterday I talked about how, so I said yesterday how there's two options, right? The way I saw it, right? Either we go from here straight up or we go straight down first to gap fill and then we go back up. I don't know why it does this weird squiggly stuff. Anyway, right? But I talked about how if in order to just go straight up from here, we'd need about a 1% gap up in the morning. And that's essentially what we got. Tesla opened up about 1% pre-market green, right? And that's pretty much what ended up pushing us all the way up to 250. I did take some profits here, but I am still holding, a decent amount of shares, honestly, because I still think that there is the possibility to go even further. And it's kind of like I don't want to miss it either. You know what I mean? But again, I did take some profits so that I will re-enter once again if this ends up being the rejection area. Now, let's talk about it though. So 250, right? Why did I say 250 yesterday? The reason I said 250 yesterday is because that has been an 247 to 250. Is because that has been an overall level of pretty major support and resistance. So you can see back here, it acted as obviously a pretty decent resistance. It came up, got rejected, came up. I mean, we did get rejected, but then we pre-market blasted through it, right? And then if that happens, then it just changes it into a support now, right? But nonetheless, and then, we came back down here, support, came back down here, pretty much around the same area, 250, 247, support, massive rally, came down again, massive rally, came down again, massive rally on the 1 hour candlestick. And then of course we faded after that because the momentum finally died off after all this bullish momentum, of course, right? So with that being said, we're back at this level once again, falling a little bit pre-market, but that can change pretty quickly. However, that's kind of why I said it, right? Because it's acted as a pretty major resistance and especially a major support pretty much throughout this run that we've just had recently. But even more importantly, in my opinion, the reason I said 250 is because that is pretty much roughly that 247, 250 level is kind of the neckline of that head and shoulders pattern, right? So this head and shoulders pattern that we've been talking about for quite a while now, right? The neckline is around this level of around 250 to 247, and it's extremely crucial. Now, again, yesterday we did break below it, which in theory should begin this correction and should begin this head and shoulder pattern moving downwards. But as I always say, and I'll say once again, whenever you break out or down, whenever you break some important level, whether it's a resistance, whether it's support, in this case, of course, it was a support, you turn it into the opposite. So in this case, of course, since we were all the way up here chilling, doing our thing, came back down several times to this 250, 247 level, acted as a support many times, a pretty good support too. Now that we finally did break through it, naturally this same level that was the support now becomes resistance, and it's common to retest that breakout or break down, in this case a breakdown, right? So as we broke down, it's pretty common to get a bit of a follow through, even more so to the downside, before you ultimately come back up, retest it. And in this case, that's exactly what we are doing. We are retesting that breakdown and that neckline of that head and shoulder pattern. So closing just above 250, again, these extra cents to me are irrelevant, right? It's not a very convincing close above 250. If we close, like, let's say somewhere, well into 250s, let's say 252, 3, 4, even like 5 especially, that's when this situation and this whole pattern, in my opinion, would have been substantially more complicated and much more confusing. But so far we are finding rough rejection, or not really finding rejection, but we're at the area where we can potentially find some massive rejection, where I think that we might actually head down even further. So that's really important to kind of understand. And we are at a pretty decent Fibonacci level as well over here, as you can see, right? Kind of around this kind of 0.238, potentially going to the 382 level, which will be at 254 roughly. So nonetheless, it's a very crucial level tomorrow, going into tomorrow. But the more important thing also about tomorrow, and I believe Thursday, is Jerome Powell is apparently speaking once again, I think both days as well. So we'll see what that ends up coming to fruition. Of course, I believe Tesla has their deliveries coming out this weekend. So, if we get to sell the news into the delivery report, if we start, let's say tomorrow and until Friday, roughly it starts selling off, coming down, I view it as a buying opportunity personally. If deliveries are flop, it is what it is. But I personally like selling into an event rather than rallying into an event. From a bullish perspective, of course, because if you're rallying into deliveries, to me, it's a little bit suspicious. Anyway, so that's kind of the why I'm looking at it, right? Sometimes it's really that simple. Head and shoulders, broke it before the neck, underneath the neckline. Now we're retesting it, and we need to see how tomorrow comes and what happens with that. Now, going over to, let's say, the RSI in the 1 hour, you can see it's really just it's following this little movement, but ultimately it's a lot lower than even back when we were over here. Like RSI is pretty much sitting at 30. And we're still sitting at $250 per share. But back when we were even trading at like even 200, RSI was still in pretty much overbought territories, right? And we still continued rallying. So the RSI is definitely showing weakness, and it's showing that it's time to cool off, it's time to relax, it's time to kind of chill a bit. That's kind of what it's telling me right now, right? The 4 hour you can see just completely crashing downwards. Very similar idea, just a little bit more severe in my opinion. The daily, same concept, right? It's just falling below really major levels right now that, even when we were back here, we were at a higher RSI level, even though the stock was substantially lower than what we are right now. Now, that doesn't mean that Tesla has to completely crash, but it does tell me that, there is softening happening. There is a little bit of weakness. There is a little bit of momentum just kind of slowing down for now, at least, right? So tomorrow, again, very, very important day to me. Again, I really need to see if we don't resist at this 250 level, if this 250 level to maybe slightly even higher to 252/3 level does not act as a major resistance and we don't get sold off from that level, again, this will make things more complicated. And there's a possibility that this is the correction. Like this was all it was. I don't think it is, but that's why I'm still holding shares, because technically there is a possibility that this is all it took, just a small little correction, which, I mean, I guess it wasn't that small if you think about it. From here to here, it was about a 13% correction, which isn't atrocious, right? It's an okay correction. I just think it'll go lower personally. And if it does, I'll buy. If not, I'll ride with what I got. No worries whatsoever, right? But that's the kind of the way I'm looking at it. Now, going over to the daily very quickly, let's take a look at the major moving indicators, right? The main one, of course, here is going to be 21 EMO, which we're still just barely bouncing off of. We didn't really touch it, but we're pretty damn close. I still think we'll come down to touch it at the very least. I'll be surprised if we don't, but again, that's why I'm holding shares. So just in case we don't, I have shares to ride this momentum still, and I'm perfectly happy with that. If we go down, I will obviously continue buying that dip and averaging down. Over and over and over, right? So the 21 EMO right below us sitting at pretty much 237, right? Which is pretty much roughly around that gap fill. So definitely eyeballing that still. The Bollinger Band, remember how I said we always come down to the white line? Well, we're pretty much at it right now, and we're kind of bouncing around it, right? We don't usually bounce directly off of it. Usually we kind of, come around it and kind of go up and below it, several times. Like for instance, when we came over here, right? We were hugging the green line, pretty much same situation that we had here, and then we came back to it, kind of bounced off of it a couple times, came back to it, hugged around it, went below it a little bit, you kind of dance around it. That's why I personally don't think there'll be any major move happening, at least until deliveries next week minimum. I do think this week, I don't think there'll be a major move to the upside. I'll be pretty surprised if there is, just based on how this looks to me. At the very least, I think it'll be sideways, if not moving back down somewhere to around the 230s, maybe even barely entering the 220s, right? I'll be surprised if it's anything except that. I'll be surprised if there's an actual rally, just the way it looks to me, right? It doesn't make sense, but again, you never know with Tesla. That's why I still have shares, just in case. But that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. I mean, there's not really that much more to update, right? It's kind of what I've been saying so far, right? This is so far playing out exactly what I said yesterday. And, if it continues playing out the way I think it will, that means we move down from here. And then, we start filling some gaps. We start filling this gap. We have a gap all the way here at even 220, right? And I'll be eyeballing those two as the main ones. We even have a gap all the way down at 207, which I don't think is impossible, but a little bit less likely in my opinion. And again, on the weekly, easiest way to look at it. Wow, that was an interesting candle, but it's only the second day of the week. But, the worst case scenario to me is pretty much entering around the 210s, 215s. That's like the worst case scenario. But I think the realistic scenario will be somewhere around the 230s, give or take. 225, 230, 235, somewhere around there. Is the realistic scenario that I think will play out, and I think we'll go there. It'll just, of course, not always happen directly straight there. We'll just casually drop there. Everyone buys, everyone gets rich. The market will always find to do little maneuvers, little tricks, little things here and there that makes you doubt, it makes you wonder, makes you question, makes you kind of regret or, FOMO. Or it doesn't, the market's really good at doing all these things to people that can't keep their emotions in check, right? So you have to be really careful. You have to be, very cool-headed and level-headed when it comes to these kind of things. But that's kind of what I am seeing right now. So let me know what you think down below. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching. Tomorrow should be an interesting day, very important day. Definitely watch out for that 250, 253 max level as our level of rejection. And if it does, I think we'll go lower. If it goes higher, then this potentially could be the correction. I think we might even revisit about 270, 280 again pretty soon. So, but yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.